Do you think that it's inevitable that China does take Taiwan back? When you look at the geography and the sort of rising size of its military, from a lay person's perspective, you look at it and you think, well, how can you, as big and great as the United States is, it'd take a lot to try and stop that from happening, given just simply the proximity, Stephen?
Yeah. Well, look, let's put the military angle aside for a moment. I mean, China has spent years trying to pretend that it could peacefully convince the Taiwanese to rejoin and willingly the People's Republic. But the problem is the people in Taiwan have watched what they do to their own citizens, whether it's the COVID response of nailing them in buildings, whether it's the Uyghur concentration camps that are effectively, they call them the re-education camps, whether it's the suppression of the democratic point of view in Hong Kong, the breaking of agreements. So China are proving to be not a partner whose word you can take. So if you're sitting in Taiwan going, well, look, we could do this, we could consider reintegrating into China, you go, but we know what they're going to do. They're going to treat us. I mean, even the ambassador yesterday said there'll be re-education for the Taiwanese people. I mean, that would fill you with horror. Do you want your children bombarded with the sort of propaganda that you see the Chinese government being put out? I mean, of course you don't want to in the future. So then to your core point, I mean, yes, it would be horrendous if there was a conflict over Taiwan. Neither side would come out without significant damage and casualties in terms of the US and China. I've just seen a report that a think tank believes it could defend Taiwan, but the losses to both sides would be significant. And I think both sides need to, take a step back and take a deep breath. But the dictator about to be appointing himself as the lifelong dictator of China, it doesn't care about those things. And Australians just need to understand that the Z that we all hope for, the Z that would lead China out of its isolationism and its past, just is not the person that we had all hoped for. We all wanted to see the benign rise of China. It didn't have to become democratic, but just the benign rise of its power. But it clearly has no intention of doing anything other than what it wants to do. And anybody, whether it's the Japanese, whether it's the Norwegians, whether it's the Germans, all incidents over the last couple of years where they've all got their dressing downs and been attacked by the Chinese government. It's not just Australia, as some have tried to pretend. But people in Australia have got to be prepared to say it's China's behaviour. It's China that are doing these things, nobody else.
Stephen, before you go, the summit on the jobs and employment that the government's preparing for, already a number of ministers, including the Treasurer, holding roundtables, and the lead-up has already begun for that meeting in the first week of September. Peter Dutton's rejected the invitation to attend, as did Susan Lee. In fact, we thought no opposition member would attend, but David Littleproud spoke to Tom Connell yesterday and said, no, I'll go. I'd love to be there. Regional Australia needs a seat at the table, Stephen.
Well, look, that's a constructive voice. I mean, it contrasts completely with the leader and the deputy leader of the opposition. They just desperately want this to fail. They desperately don't want to see productivity back in the enterprise bargaining system. They don't want to debate the big issue around immigration and whether Australia needs to begin to return to more traditional levels of immigration. They don't want to talk about what can we do in all of these areas to take Australia forward. I think it's a terrible look for them to sideline themselves so they can just be seen as harping critics. They just desperately wanted to fail. And I just think that is an unwise political position for them to take.